Hello and welcome to the show. We start today with the Formula E racing car. I drove this a while back, took it around the Nürburgring when it first came to Forza 5, and I'll be honest, I don't really like it. It's nothing to do, well, okay, maybe a small bit to do with it being electric, I'll get to that in a minute. It is more to do with the way that the car drives. It has no rear end grip. Really very little. I was trying to think of a car that has less grip. Maybe, I don't even think a Hennessy Venom is worse for rear end grip, and the Hennessy Venom has to deal with 1,200 horsepower. I think that has more grip than this. It really just doesn't. It slides absolutely everywhere. Not my sort of car to drive. Now the problem with being electric is that you can't really hear it. It's very quiet, which means when it comes to changing gears, you can't hear when it's buzzing in the limiter. There are a number of occasions, even all the times I've tried getting used to this car, I still find myself leaving it in the rev limiter, not realising it wants to change up a gear, because it just all sounds completely the same. That's not a huge problem, but it is a little bit of annoyance. While yes, the handling can at times be a bit of a problem, it is still a very quick car. It doesn't weigh very much, has incredibly good brakes. So around the course of a lap, if you can keep it all together, the Formula E can be quite fast. It is also in A-Class, but it's not the only single-seat open-wheeled race car in A-Class, because we have this, the Mazda F2000 vehicle. And it has an engine, it makes noise, you can tell when to change up gear. It's quite nice, I will be honest. Also, cornering is a hell of a lot better in this car. It has slick tyres, it has various aero parts, so there is a huge amount of grip through the corners. A little while back, again, I built one of these into A-Class, and it mullered Daniel's Toyota GT86 and his Mercedes C63 AMG, despite going to tracks with fairly long straights, because it can carry a huge amount of corner speed. It really is. It's a very easy car to drive, this one. But it's not without its problems. Primarily the gearbox in this car is useless. I'll be honest, the gear ratios, there's only 4 gears and the gear ratios are terrible. You cannot get this car off the start line. It just doesn't launch. Sure, maybe this car is designed to be used for flying starts, but in Forza we only have standing starts to work with, so getting off the line is very tricky, and even if you do get it off without stalling, it's still very slow. The gear ratios are so bad, if you come to a slow hairpin, it has absolutely no power when you try to put it out the other side. So the gear ratios are rubbish on this car, so it struggles at some corners. If you can keep it happy and can keep it in the right rev range, then it's a perfectly good car to drive. Of course, it will run out of straight line speed at about 140, but it's a fairly similar story for the Formula E, so there's not a huge difference between the two. Me and Daniel headed out to see how they would compare to each other in a race. First, we went to Long Beach, and Daniel very graciously waited for my Mazda to get going. Even with him waiting for me to get going, the Formula E was just so much quicker off the start line. I stalled it, he waited, and I eventually got it going. I think I was about doing 20 or 30 miles an hour before he set off, and still categorically beat me to the first corner. However, when we do get to the twisty bits, as you can see, the Mazda is quite significantly better. Yes, the Formula E doesn't have slick tyres, which certainly goes away to explaining it, but around these corners I could turn tighter, I could brake a lot later, could carry a lot more corner speed. I was pretty much all over the back of the Formula E through the corners. The minute we came to a little bit of a straight, though, the Formula E was gone, as Daniel demonstrates the handling characteristics of this car with a very big slide. I promptly have a huge dive, which I can get away with. I have the brakes, I have the grip to get away with a dive like that. Watching back on the replay, it really was a torpedo into the corner. The minute we come to a straight, off goes the Formula E straight back past me. I did learn an important lesson with this. Don't go on the curbs. As you see, I clipped the curb on the inside of the corner there. There's these horrible sort of white sausage curbs on the inside of these that you hit, and it just flung my car into the side of the Formula E. I tried to get to the inside of the hairpin, and that's when we have a real problem with the gearbox. On that final corner there, it's a fairly slow corner. I tried to take a tight line to get up the inside of the Formula E. I came out the other side, and there was nothing. Just absolutely no power. It just didn't want to move at all. Yeah, the Formula E is no doubt the quicker of the two in a straight line. It's not by a humongous margin. The problem is, out of that final corner, I lose so much time waiting for any form of power to kick in with my car. By the end of the straight, the Formula E is long gone, and with a little bit of extra speed as well, he can pull a huge margin down that particular straight. It's not long before I can catch up though. I mean, that's a few corners and I'm already straight back on the tail. I can take so much more quarter speed. I have a lot more faith in my car. You can push the Mazda as hard as you want and you're never really worried about it stepping out on you. You can make it slide if you're a real idiot, but it will just grip the road. The Formula E won't. You've got to be so careful with it to keep it all together. And again, I'm now pestering as we come down the back straight. I can't do anything here because I know I'm not as quick in a straight line, but because the corner I'm not at a silly low speed, I remain close enough. I remain sort of within. I don't lose too much time down these back straights. We come into the final tight and twisty section. I get over the curves, get sideways. The Formula E gets sideways in sympathy. It hadn't been sideways for a couple of corners. It was feeling the need. Slide, and it's exactly the same story at the final corner. Again, I can take more speed through there. I have a much better handling car, but the minute we get on the straight, the Renault has just vanished. It's so depressing sitting there and watching the rival. I know my car is quicker around 95% of this track, and then just watching it disappear because I can't put any power down at the final corner is very irritating. It took a few laps, but the inevitable did happen as Daniel tried to put the power down and promptly spun. That's a common place to see cars going sideways, is off camber on the exit there, and with a car like this, it was only a matter of time until Daniel will get a little bit carried away and bin it. It's so easy to get this car out of shape and to have a problem, especially at a corner like that. So I waited up for Daniel so we could carry on our little battle. It was quite good fun. I will be honest, racing these two. They weren't quite as vastly different as last time I'd raced this F2000 car, but yeah, I had to make the most of the corners. I had to carry as much speed as I could because I knew the minute we get to a straight, the Formula E would go flying past, which, yeah, it was a bit of a pain just knowing the speed that he had. I didn't quite have time to get over to be defensive in here. In the end, I didn't need to bother. I've never gone around the outside of somebody at this corner before. I managed to make it stick without brushing the wall. That's the amount of grip I get in this car. It's irrelevant though. What I do here is completely and utterly pointless because unless Daniel crashes on any of these corners, he will blast past me as we leave the hairpin. I try taking a wider line, just trying to keep a little bit more speed so that I could try and get out of the corner better. I couldn't do it. Whatever I did, it just bogs down horrendously out of that final hairpin, and the Formula E is gone. Not got quite such a big margin this time round, but still, it just can't leave the hairpin. It just cannot do it, and in the end, that is the way that the race would end. So we decided to have a go at another track. This time Daniel didn't bother to wait for my car. As you can see, I'm already out of shot. That's the gap that is just from the start line. That's how poor the F2000 car gets off the line. This particular layout of Yas Marina, I thought the Formula E might struggle a little bit with its handling. There are quite a few fast, quite a few scary corners. There is a straight here, yes, a fairly sizable straight, but we don't have the incredibly slow speed hairpin for my car to get completely bogged down in. So I wasn't expecting there wasn't going to be such a big difference between the cars in a straight line. And sure enough, by the halfway stage through the opening lap, I was closing the gap in. I could carry more speed through the tight and twisty section. I would lose a bit on the straight, but I could probably make up all of that in the braking zone. As Daniel just outbrakes himself a little bit, gets a big slide on, and through the next corner gets an even bigger slide on. You don't want to be going over the bumps through there. And by the end of the first lap, despite the fact that my car just doesn't get off the line, I was right there, right up back behind the Formula E into turn 1. I may have got a little bit carried away. Daniel ate the curb on the inside. I may have tried pushing a little bit too hard and gone and explored the outer limits of the track. The Formula E is going very sideways. I didn't think the car would like this particular corner, and I was pretty much correct watching the Renault slide around all over the place. I was up alongside Daniel, but this is quite a tough place to overtake down this hill, unless the car in front does that. And again, the lack of rear-end grip lets the Formula E down. Daniel just got it a little bit too sideways and couldn't quite keep it under control. He will cruise up to the back of me, down this straight, but he's not got enough time to really do anything about it. I'm on the inside, I've got better brakes and better handling. He's not going to go around the outside of the much better handling, much grippier car. Yes, it will be quicker as we come onto the straight. Look at the twitch it gets, just trying to get through the final corner. That is easily flat out in my Mazda. It wasn't easily flat out for the Formula E, because you're never quite sure what the rear end of it's going to do. It's a very scary, inconsistent car, I found, to drive, and Daniel was certainly struggling with some of them characteristics as we were racing here. The race at Yas Marina was actually very good fun. It was a pretty damn close race. The mixture of corners and straights meant that our lap times were very, very similar. There wasn't that one corner where the Formula E would suddenly pull away or my car would struggle on. So, yeah, over the course of the race, we actually remained very close. I think this is the second to last lap now at this point, and I'm doing my best to fend off the Renault. Perhaps a little bit quicker over the course of the lap. It can make up its time down the straights, provided Daniel doesn't do anything silly with it through the corners. I think it's a bit quicker, but it's a lot easier to make mistakes. Also, I've never been scared of a Formula E. It's never felt so humongous compared to anything. When you're driving this little F2000 car, that Formula E looks absolutely massive. And then you drive a normal car, and then the Formula E looks like a tiny racing vehicle again. And now we're coming towards the final lap, and Daniel still couldn't find a way past. He didn't quite have enough straight line speed to out-drag me down the long straight. I had the more powerful brakes, I had the better handling, so I could just about keep fending him off. Coming up towards these next fast corners, if Daniel could keep it together through here, then he stood a chance. It was very easy to make a mistake though with the slidey Renault. Even on this run, he was quick through there, but even then, you could see the puff of smoke as it wanted to start sliding again down the hill. I was a tiny bit too slow. Daniel got a very good run down there as we head on to the back straight. Now I'm in a little bit of trouble. Daniel's further alongside than he had been previously as he pulls out. I'm still making him go the long way around the outside. I know I've got good brakes. I get a little bit too brave, just run a bit wide on the exit. Daniel cuts back to the inside. It's side by side through the final couple of corners. And even though I do everything I can, I can't out-drag the Formula E. And Daniel takes the victory. It was good fun though at Yas Marina. Well, it's time to hand both the cars over to our tame racing driver and see what he can do with them at the Top Gear test track. Off the line, you could see, you could look at the size of the gap that the Formula E has already made. Yes, this test is, shall we say, not suited to the Mazda. It's always likely to struggle over the course of a lap when we're doing it from a standing start, but we did see that I could catch up to Daniel in the course of one lap with the Mazda because it is so much quicker, or it can be so much quicker through the corners if the Formula E has some sideways moments. However, our driver was doing a good job of keeping the Renault all under control as they leave the hammerhead. Will we see the Renault slide a little bit? It sort of wants to slide, and the Mazda is not really finding very much power. I think it must have been just a little bit too low a speed for the Mazda to actually get out of that corner. Formula E is already flying towards the tyre bundle. The Mazda has now got to some decent gears, and it will be quick through past the tyres. We were absolutely flat out through that section as well, up towards the second to last corner now for the Formula E. It's still wanting to slide a little bit. The Mazda can take huge speed through this section, but it's no good. The Formula E is across the line, and the Mazda follows suit a little while further back. But our driver didn't get away with the Formula E. It still found a way to bite him in the arse. Coming up towards the second to last corner, under braking, he's out perhaps a little bit too wide, turns in, and that's not gone quite to plan. Back in, just completely given up while trying to carry the speed into the corner. There is just no rear end grip in that car whatsoever. On to the lap times, well, we know the Formula E is the quicker of the two, and I stuck these in with the road-going cars just for a comparison's sake. Formula E is blooming quick. A 1:13.8, faster than a Ferrari Enzo, not that far off. A Pagani Zonda Cinque. That's a very quick lap time. It's a very hard car to drive, but if you can keep it together, it's still a single-seat race car, and it can set damn fast lap times. The Mazda F2000 is always going to struggle. It's a sort of track that it doesn't really like. It's a very fast track. The Mazda doesn't have a huge amount of straight line speed, and it probably lost most of that 3 seconds getting off the line. I would say most of that 3 seconds is lost from the start line. Perhaps a bit just not being able, having a wonky gear ratios for the hammerhead as well. I suspect didn't help it. Yeah, a lot of that is just down to the fact that this is a standing start test, and the Mazda can't do it. But there we go. That is it for them too. As far as to which car do I prefer, I would go for the Mazda. Despite the gearbox being horrible in it, I would have the Mazda purely because the Formula E doesn't have enough grip. Even though it's quicker and it won both of the races, I would have the Mazda. It's a much nicer car to drive. I think it's much easier to fix the Mazda's problems than it would be to fix the Formula E's. A gearbox, or adjusting the gear ratios, I don't know. I'm not sure if you can change the gearbox in the car entirely on Forza, but it would be much easier to fix the Mazda's problems than the Formula E's. Because one of the problems with the Formula E's is that it's electric and you can't hear to change gears, and you can't do anything about that with with Forza 5. Anyway, that is it for this video, guys. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.